Today you posted a picture of running the bases with the grandkids. So still baseball season?
Yeah, fall baseball,
Fall ball. Okay.
fall ball. For kind of like a travel club for I guess a certain people who want to play baseball during the fall.
Well, more power to them.
Yeah,
I've never developed that flavor for baseball. We Bishop and I were talking before the show. There was all these rumors going around about Sanders getting cut,
yeah,
and looked it up and was like, what's AI anymore? What's real anymore? and all this in
yeah,
sports, and it is definitely crazy. All of this fake stuff that's out there.
yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate you coaches. Man, you're reading, you're doing. It's not just what you saw online.
Right. Well, you have to be able to substantiate. I remember once one of my graduate classes, I was kind of embarrassed when I was pursuing my graduate studies, and one time I jumped up in one of the class and I said, "Well, I don't think and I feel," and they said, "Well, what give you the reason to think and feel that way?" And they said, "Well," he said, well, "You said, where's your, why do you think or why do you feel that way?" So what evidence do you have to back up how you think and how you feel? Just you
substantiate your feeling.
how you exactly. Yeah. And he looked at it, he said, young man, that's not how you go about presenting your facts, not about how you think or how you feel. If you want to bring something to the table for us, to review or to assess or to evaluate, you need to have your sightings, you need to have your thoughts, and you just say, this amount of review of literature has allowed me to develop this hypothesis. So, and so I said, I was a research and development class, so he was setting a trend, and it stuck with me because I was embarrassed because I wanted to let everybody know how I thought and how I feel. And he said, truly, nobody really cares if you can't back it up.
Exactly.
But you found out that it's hard. You question why nobody's caring about these homicides.
Oh, well, and it's interesting that in this book I was just telling y'all about, this is what this book is about. It talks about, it says, society efforts to combat the mostly black-on-black murders on epidemic were inept, fragmented, underfunded, contorted by a variety of ideological, political, and racial sensitivities. So when homicide gets the attention, the focus seems to be on spectacles, mass shooting, celebrity murders, which I always talk about, a step removed from the people who were doing most of the dying black men.
Yeah, it's definitely heartbreaking when you really think about it, that what we hear about are mass shootings and school shootings and AR-15s, but the shootings that we see, the shootings that we hear about, the shootings that we experience are young black men with pistols, not in group settings, but in just random chaos moments.
Isolationist responses, to conflict, oftentimes trauma, don't know how to deal with it. When I think about tomorrow at the meetings, Miss Yolanda is going to be there. We're going to have two of the mothers who have lost sons, and when my connection to this topic is dealing with Mother Olivier and Father Joe, and how they're continued to deal with the murder of Derek, because it's something that you never get over, and so we move on many times to the next case,
right?
But the family is that trauma of making that call, burying our son. That's not what we're supposed to be doing on a regular as we're doing right now in United States of America.
Right.
Civilized, wealthy. This is not a third world country. Now we are impoverished in similar in many communities. All right, but that's the reason that we're looking at the social determinants which can remove this type of behavior. And what's the stimulus for this? Because I was sharing with one of my mentors earlier today. We were talking about it. I said, regardless of how then we'll go to prayer. But we got into this because this book is really stimulating. Yeah. But I said, regardless of how you look at this, I said, even though poverty is rooted deeply into this epidemic, I said, what makes you really want to go back and rationalize and process and discern the difference is the fact that during the Great Depression, when the poverty was just rampant in underserved and particularly minority communities, you did not have this epidemic of killing each other.
No. Something has shifted. We've gotten off track. But one of the best ways to get back on track is the bishop throwing us up a word to the Lord to bail us out of our mess.
Bring it in. Come on, Bishop. Wave that white towel over there. Get us going like you did Sunday.
God, we thank you for life. Thank you for another chance to come together tonight. And just thank you for just being able to have these conversations for the purpose of saving lives. And thank you for the listeners on tonight. We pray that you would just continue to help us as we stir up the conversation, that transformation will be taking place and more lives will be saved and not lost. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 As always, I like to kick things off with the why. Arkansas is the hungriest state in the nation. We've got more widows raising children. These are mamas that have been left behind by men than anywhere else. It's about the orphan. 391,000 children in the U.S. living in the foster care system, 4,000 of them right here in Arkansas. Here's the hard truth. Only half of teen mothers finish high school, and we've got teen mom problem, and we've got a too young grandma problem. We've got a lot of problems with things starting out too early and people not being able to live up to their potential because they're not planning, they're not thinking.
Right.
We've got a poverty problem, and this in particular impacts children of color across our country and across our state. We've got an addiction problem. By the time kids hit their teenage years, millions of American kids have already been experimenting with drugs. We've got a prison problem. More than 2 million people currently incarcerated, and that's one of the things we're going to kind of talk about tonight, about some of those things. Coach had sent me an article earlier that really got me looking at some stuff. But more than anything, all these things are contributing to a fact that we've got to change, and that is that homicide is taking the lives of our young black men and our young black girls at a rate that just exceeds anything of common sense. Mm-hmm. And so at every Arkansan, our vision is to see more people chase their God-given dreams. And far too often, those dreams are sidelined because of the zip code you were born in more than anything else. So, Coach, we're blessed to be able to be part of First and 45.
Amen.
And working on this problem, because it's not car accidents, it's not cancer, it's not heart disease, it's not even that pink ribbon for breast cancer awareness. It's homicide. Mm-hmm. It's young people taking other people's lives. And Coach, that article you sent me was really interesting, talking about some of the unseen costs.
Mm-hmm. That was a mortician who wrote that and shared that.
And so I went down the rabbit hole of looking at the real cost of homicide outside of the normal things that we think about. And so funeral was the first kind of rabbit hole I went down. So the average funeral in America is $7,000 to $12,000. Most families, because they've not planned for this, they're financing, they're fundraising, or they're just doing nothing.
GoFundMe.
Mm-hmm.
GoFundMe. But I mean, I can't remember who it was I spoke to, but there was a funeral home that they actually had a closet full of ashes for families that just couldn't afford, and they just kept them there. And it was almost like they were financing the bodies. But beyond this, I mean, and on that note, just a cremation service. How much do you think cremation costs?
I don't know. I'm void. 5,000.
The average national cost is $6,970. Cremation. That's nothing else.
Yeah, that's just to take the body and put it in.
And I mean, when you look at that, and then, I mean, if you're burying someone, you need a burial plot. Those are a couple grand. Headstones, flowers, transportations, getting all the family here. I mean, they say that very quickly, for a family that loses someone, it's $15,000+
to bury him accordingly. Appropriately.
Just to kind of take care of that part of it. if they lingered in a hospital and have medical expense. That doesn't include any of that other stuff. This is just that price of a funeral. None of this includes the emotional toll of burying a child.
No, the trauma.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about it, this is, for so many of these young people, this is the point where they should have been contributing the most, and they're getting cut off. And I mean, I've personally attended multiple funerals where an offering plate was passed in the funeral multiple times from the funeral home, trying to just get enough money together to make things make sense. I know, Coach, you've said that y'all paid for multiple funerals.
When I was at Arkansas Baptist.
And you were at Arkansas Baptist. But for low-income households, these funeral bills become debt that becomes passed on to the survivors, creating a financial instability for years to come. Loved ones of the deceased often suffer the double blow of, I lost someone, and now I got to pick up this. And you think about it. I mean, 15 grand?
Yeah.
There's not many of us that can take that bite at any given time.
Without financing it, and that's why the life insurance policy, things like that, are so important now.
Right.
But you're not planning to pay a life insurance policy. I mean, that's the thing, that I try to plan for my children, for my family. To listen, hey, this is what happens. You take this right here, and I've done this. I had to do this for Coach Rip, being his person here to have his information. Is that you take your life insurance policy, that allows them to do the borough, because they realize, hey, you have this money coming, you sign something that you received insurance, and they pay you the rest, which then lets them go ahead and start the process. And so, I mean, but if you're struggling in a situation, barely keep your lights on.
Right.
Okay, you have a light bill, and you have children. All the things that we're talking about in this case is that we see this epidemic spreading. Okay, it's usually in this impoverished community, as you talked about, teenage pregnancy. All these things just continue to stack on top of each other. And that's what this book, Ghettoville, that's what Ghetto Side by Jill Leovay is talking about, is how this epidemic is not treated as other public health issues are. Diabetic. I just saw in a recent article last week how the children, and I'll talk about it because I got it out here, how we're doing this major investment on opioids with the Children's Hospital.
Right.
Okay, and so these are crises that are being elevated and brought to the front to address these issues. But what the reason is, once again, it talks in this book about, the 6% of the population is responsible for nearly 50% of the homicides that we always talk about. You and I, when in here, we always say it's only 2% that's really responsible for this. And so that specific population, 2%, is kind of discounted as in many instances. I says, does Black death matter? And that's the question that I always ask. Yes, Black lives matter, but the way this is being interpreted, does Black death? Because we're sitting here looking at who's dying, but we're not being radical in our approach to change this specific 2% of the population that's responsible for over half of the homicide. How this could change our microscope or a telescope on this 2%. Then we would see murder go down 50%.
Yeah.
So we don't need to talk about nothing else if we're truly trying to stop homicide in the United States of America.
We want to make something work. There's some easy ways to go about it. There's some hard ways
Just
to go
tell them
about
what they told you, Coach, when you was about your thoughts.
Oh, yeah. How can you back that up? You know what I'm saying? I can now. I can. That's why we got a show.
Hey guys, it is the end of the first quarter of First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Black men have so many different problems, so many different issues. Homicide rate, high incarceration rate, fatherless homes. What is America going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? Yeah, what are we going to do about it? When I say we, I'm talking to Black men. I'm asking us, what are we going to do about issues that negatively impact Black men and boys to a greater degree than other demographics? Everybody knows about the homicide epidemic in this country regarding Black men and boys. While comprising only 6% of the nation's population, will account for 50% of the nation's homicide victims. So what are we going to do about it? Here's another disturbing reality. While making up only 6% of the nation's population, we're about 40% of the nation's prison population. In fact, 1 in 3 black males are projected to go to jail in their lifetime. Again, I ask, what are we going to do about it? Collectively, black men have the means to solve these problems. We just don't have the mind to do so. And means without the mind is meaningless. Brother, it doesn't mean a thing.
With Coach Fitzgerald. And we are back with First and 45 with Coach Fitzgerald, talking about some of the other costs of homicide. Coach, it's estimated that every young adult that's murdered before the age of 45 costs the United States in just equity about $1 to $2 million. So, I mean, you start looking at the economic drain that's gone on, and it's been disproportional for our black communities. I mean, you talk about the thief coming to steal and kill and destroy. I mean, doing it all in one fell swoop. There's also this ripple effect of incarceration. Many prisoners are away from home. Families have to drive long distances, paying hundreds of dollars each trip for gas, food, and sometimes lodging. There was a study that found 67% of families struggled to meet the basic needs because of incarcerated-related costs. And they say that children especially suffer. So children of these incarcerated men and women disproportionately, because it's like the long drives, they've already lost their father, the emotional, all these things going on, and then they're the ones that need those resources, and those resources are being diverted. And then families spend thousands yearly on prison calls and commissary.
Yeah.
That's
a business there.
Yeah. This said the typical family of an incarcerated person spends between $200 and $500 a month just to maintain contact with their loved one. That's insane to think about.
And you already are usually coming from the poverty. I mean, incarceration is tied heavy to impoverished communities.
And you look at, they're probably financing out, because a lot of times these families will hire an attorney that will finance it out to them. So they're making payments on that. They're making payments. It is just such a cost on all of this. And these costs really fall heavy on single moms. Because I remember we had one kid that was incarcerated, and his single mom was putting a couple $100s a month in his commissary. Yeah. And it's just like, you can't be doing that. You can't feed the kids you got outside and worrying about this. But these mothers and grandmothers are stepping up to provide for them in prison, juggling multiple jobs just to kind of keep things afloat.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but I think it's so important right here what you're saying, mothers and grandmothers, because as I sit here and I realize when I yesterday I just went to go to my grandson's baseball practice, and that I can't tell you how it got kind of emotional to me, how being a black grandfather to a son, because I realized that that's not common. When I start thinking about, how there's so many other issues that we have to address, because my dad never made it to 61 due to cancer, which, at the time, it died in 1983. My brother, which had a daughter and a grandson, died at 41 to cancer. Now, both smoked heavily. My oldest brother was alcoholic. So when you start looking at the things that I think that you can address and that you can do something about, and I start looking at, the black male being removed out of the community, and we're sitting here talking about how the black male is removed. That's why I sent you that article, because we're removed by death, we're removed by incarceration. Now, there's so many other factors that were being removed as well to address the social determinants. But these conversations have not been taking place. And so when you take that male out of the community and you have the women, which are doing a fabulous job,
with one hand tied behind their back.
It's just kudos to them doing exactly what you were saying. That's not how it was set up, Bishop. That's not how, when the Proverbs 22:6 didn't say, remove the men and make the woman responsible.
Absolutely.
That's not it. Scripture tells us the game plan that we're supposed to be executing within our communities. And until we look at these factors to say how we're going to stop, that's the reason I'm always asking, why is violence down? Yeah. When I look and they say, oh, crime is down in this city, this percent, or down this percent, this percent. Well, the deal is, if it's not just a stock market crash or a stock market increase, okay, then you haven't changed something that's really the cause for it to go down. How crime is going to consistently go down were those 7 factors that I was talking about last week. And until you start addressing the poverty issue, the teenage pregnancy issue, and I'm going to tell you, just the high school completion rate, you realize if a black male does not complete high school, he has over a 70% chance of being incarcerated during his lifetime. Just those basic factors that we have to go back and look at. And for that reason, I got back involved in ABC to work with Premier, meeting with them for what we're talking about, the GED program, because these are things that as we talk about at First and 45, it's great to go to church on Sunday, and sing praise and worship. But what are we going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to change the lives of the people who need help the most? And that's the thing that I'm saying. If we're going to complain, we need solutions. And what are the solutions? These are things that have to be addressed if truly transformation is going to take place.
Yeah. You look at this, these untalked about kind of costs of incarceration and homicide, children that are left behind. Kids of homicide victims already have a higher likelihood for behavioral issues, anxiety, academic decline.
That's what Coach always talk about, the grenade effect.
Yep.
And you talk about the funeral cost as part of the because when this cost and these expenses hit these grandparents, as you were mentioning, who's left behind to take care of all of this cost, then the life that they're trying to live. Imagine what that looks like on the other side of dealing with the death of loved ones.
They're trying to raise kids on a fixed retired income, without any preparation, without any backup plan. Grandparents are supposed to be the backup plan when you need a babysitter, when you need help.
Right.
They become the primary, and there is no backup.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting and I'm gonna give you some of my time too, bro. But I
always take his time.
No.
He always says he's gonna do that.
I think it's so interesting when you go to the schools, how, particularly in the private school settings now, it's just amazing because for me, it was, again, emotionally for me, because my kids didn't have grandparents. All right, I mentioned my dad died, my mother has all in 6 weeks. Same thing. My kid's grandmother on Cynthia's side is the only grandparent that we had. So we just had their grandmother. So they didn't know anything about a man or anything that what I'm trying to play. But I'm gonna tell you something. Go to these private schools and see, once they have Grandparents' Day, you can't get on campus.
Nope. CJ went to Little Rock Christian. My daughter went to Little Rock Christian.
That's what I'm saying.
They let out the upper schools on Grandparents' Day.
That's it.
So that the upper school kids don't have to deal with the traffic of all the grandparents coming in. It is insane. CJ's shaking her head.
I'm saying, and I know, because once again, it was moving to me. Why? Because my kids didn't have it. But I was, and I'm saying, for reasons not homicide, but for reasons for health, right? All right? Which is this, if just because of dying of cancer, stroke, aneurysm, my parents, but death is death.
Yep.
All right. So regardless of why, my kids didn't have that. Didn't have that. Okay. And so, just imagine what we're talking about now, with this population of kids that are not seeing a father or grandfather. And so now what you're just mentioning, how the mothers and grandmothers are stepping into a void and performing wonderfully in assuming this responsibility. But that's not how it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. When you look at it, it really creates a generational poverty trap.
No question.
When a parent or primary breadwinner becomes incarcerated, Families immediately lose whatever income, whatever support that was generated by that person. And nationally, if you look at this, men who are incarcerated had median annual earnings of just $19,000 before imprisonment.
Wow.
And when you look at the general male population, that number is 39.6. So these men, before they were incarcerated, there was already a telltale sign of desperation, of something going on that, man, we should have raised our hand and said, look,
something's happening.
Why in the world are you struggling like this?
Yeah.
Why in the world are you doing this? Because that struggle of feeling inferior, that struggle of feeling like, man, I ain't taking care of my kids. All of a sudden, what does that happen? The first time someone mouths off about, oh man, you're a loser, you're this, they've already got that chip in their head.
Yep.
They're already thinking it. They're already feeling it, and it becomes a generational thing.
Yep.
And then once they're gone, what does that leave for the families? I mean, they fall into poverty almost overnight, relying on welfare, food stamps, extended family, the local church. I mean, I look at Miss Sykes. So Curtis Sykes' widow and his family run the Dark Hollow Food Pantry, and that's out of our North Little Rock facility. Every Wednesday they open up those doors. And I look at these mamas come in with strollers to get some groceries. I look at these grandmamas come in to get some groceries. Man, I don't care what in the world we say about the government assistance program, EBT and all that. I mean, we got a whole heck of a lot of these parents raising babies that don't have what they need. The church becomes more about meeting those needs than teaching them about Jesus.
No question.
And we got to do both. But the burden that starts to put on the nonprofits. I mean, I look at the stories you used to tell, Coach, of when you got them to Arkansas Baptist. Man, if I could just get them fed. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, they change. We do the all-you-can-eat food with so many of our kids. Man, all of a sudden, behavior changes. I'm excited that the state of Arkansas is doing free breakfast for all this year because it's like more calories for these kids. When we look at this generational poverty trap, I mean, poverty from homicide and incarceration keeps children in that cycle. Mm-hmm. And they can't ever escape it. And then what ends up happening is they offend. And then you got a second generation behind bars. You got a third generation behind bars. And that's not what God wanted. There's unintentional consequences of homicide that go far beyond just death. They go into our communities and they just a moment. Ongoing, they become generational. We got to do something to change this. And that's what First and 45 is all about. Hey guys, it's halftime. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey guys, Drew here. And for the last 11 years, we've worked together to build the Arkansas Dream Center. And over those years, things have grown, opportunities have happened, but we've continued to focus on that mission of every Arkansan chasing their God-given dream. And for that very reason, our corporation is actually known as Every Arkansan Inc. We have two ministries that really work together in tandem to see that mission take place. We have the Arkansas Dream Center, which is going out and we're reaching out to the communities. We're in those communities with mobile trucks. We're doing after school, we're feeding, we're doing all those things you know us for doing. But in addition, we realize that the church is the answer to a lot of society's problems, and there's one on every corner. So we have City Serve that comes along the side of the church, and they provide the resources. They provide furniture and clothing and diapers and all these things to the local churches so they can reach out to their neighbors. And together, when those two start to mesh, we're going out and we're bringing the churches alongside of them, and we're equipping and we're resourcing those churches. We can truly empower the local church with the resources they need to strengthen relationships in their communities. And that's what our vision is for Every Arkansan Inc. And we're so glad you're a part of it.
And we're back with First and 45 with Coach Fitzgerald, and we got an extended first half. We're in the third quarter, but we're extending the first half because that's really your fault. Pastor Drew just had a good first half, and we just kept kind of jumping in.
Well, when I asked Coach, I said, hey, is there anything on your heart beforehand? That's usually the biggest mistake I make because he's already been thinking about it.
Yeah, no question.
I mean, last week he came in. I can't remember what the book was last week. I took a picture of it. But this week, this book, he comes in.
Bleeding out.
No, last week was a different book. I took a picture of whatever it was last week, but it was just like, he started showing off this book the moment he walked in, and we're like, where do you find some of this? But Coach is always on the scout. He's always on the look. And, I mean, in this book is Ghetto Side, which when you really look at the concept of the ghetto, it was used in Germany to incarcerate basically the Jewish population to prepare them for death. And far too often we use that slang to describe our neighborhoods around here, and it really is almost speaking death upon a community, because when we start to refer to one of our communities as ghetto, man, it's an entrapment of thought, an entrapment of feelings to prepare someone for something that they don't deserve. And I mean, I looked at when we went to New York, and we went to Queens, and we were walking past several of these high-rise housing projects there, and they were just kind of describing the shootings and the death and the things that go on just right there in that little bitty neighborhood, that little condensed community.
Common.
It becomes common, and I think that's what really, when I look at it and I look at our schools that are underperforming, and our kids are trapped there. They don't have the opportunity. I was talking to Gabrielle, who runs our youth program, and she goes, Mr. Drew, I really want to see our young men and our young women be able to make a living, not at Wendy's or Burger King or McDonald's and these dead-end jobs while they're still teenagers. And I'm like, that's what Meta is about.
That's exactly right.
It's entrepreneurship. And she looked at me. She goes, I've sent a lot of emails. She goes, I've never been able to get a businessman to really be interested. And I'm like, we're going to do something about that. And I told her, I said, where we started from, the Scott Ford Center for Entrepreneurship. We've got so many strong men and women of entrepreneurship in our city, and this is a tremendous opportunity with what we're working on to coach these young people in something you're already passionate about, not to give them a job, but to give them an opportunity to create something. We look at the businesses that make this country just move, and we've lost too many young leaders to one side of the gun or the other. We got to change that. We've got to create some opportunities. We don't need 1 million more workers. We need 1 million more world changers. Yeah. And that's something that, as we've kind of been looking at that this week and talking through the fall, that just gets me really pumped, because it's even with what you're looking at on some of the degree changes, the entrepreneurship just keeps coming up. And you look at that, well, man, the entrepreneurship of the church throughout history. I mean, you're talking about a man getting on a horse and riding through the countryside just looking to share the gospel. You're talking about the early disciples just hiking on out there, with the exception of that one guy that got on the boat and went the wrong direction, and God had to get him a whale to get him back to where he needed to be. But I mean, you're talking about entrepreneurship moving the gospel forward. If we want to see a lot of this change, it's going to take that entrepreneurship mindset to come into communities and say, all right, we're not going to let this be the way it is.
No question. And I think, and how we're going to respond to the needs of our youth. And I was talking to Dwayne Clayton and Sunday, and he's working at Little Rock School District, and looking specifically at this suspended population, oftentimes, because what our data directs us to is that the suspended population, if not rehabilitated, is not diversion, that we know will end up in the juvenile detention facility. So we understand how that process works. But if we can have an opportunity to work with our youth, this small amount of population that I said that grows annually when we don't address, and so each year, if it's 2% of the population, but next year is 4% of the population because we didn't change anything with 2%, so it doubles. So then the next year is 6% of the population. So next year, so that's how it just continues, because there's nothing taking place within that second, third, fourth grade of those small numbers at the time throughout our state that are not getting the resources that they need because of the impoverished community, illiteracy, things that are taking place that are that really impact their lives. So one thing that we're working on, and everything that you try as an entrepreneur does not work. I mean, that's no. But in order to find something new, you have to try something different. You just cannot continue to do the same thing and then think that you're going to have improvement. So one thing that we've recently done and we're going to do for this population, that hopefully we can pilot, as we talked about, is the boxing ring. We just recently bought a boxing ring, and that's called destructive therapy for kids, because oftentimes those individuals are not involved in team sports. They're not involved in football and basketball. Why? Because they're not in school, and they haven't shown the wherewithal to be able to maintain to be on a team. Why? They have academic challenges. They have all these things from a team, and so what I've been just understanding, even from Sixth and Gold that we did for 8 years in the Little Rock School District, is that even the kids who needed to be there oftentimes were not able to engage or enjoying the teams because of things that were not in their control. Okay, they were suspended. Okay, they were late for school. All these things that had nothing to do with the child. All right. But the child was the, as you said, unintended consequences of not being able to participate. So what did that happen? Well, he was not able to be with the team on Saturday. He was not able to do this. And in one instance, one young man was working with, he got suspended in school, and so he couldn't play. So these, what we call positive touches, were not available to him because he was not a part of that. So then it just unraveled and had a negative impact. So what we're thinking through this boxing, it lets you focus on the one kid who needs a IEP, a life IEP. Okay, you have an education, what we call an individual education plan. I'm calling it ILP, an individual life plan, that we have to work to be able to create what this student needs. And so if we can take these and write a specific prescription for every child that's showing these tendencies of elementary school suspension, which is an indicator that more than likely they will be a candidate for being in a juvenile detention facility, which then we say, 85 to 90% of those will spend time in the big prison, is that we have to go all the way back to the root of the problem and address this. And when our kids are, I call, these early cancer cells. This is the PSA examination that you take when we go in and we see that, and now we start to treat those, those symptoms or those tests that reveal that we have some issues, and this is what the kids are telling us. So that boxing ring gives us an opportunity to take 10 or 15 of those kids each year, right? That's about the number that we could do, and then we can say next year we got 30 in the next year. So now we have stacked our own individual life plan with something that we can do, and then by the way, let's walk over here and get this META program. Okay, so now we got something else that we can do for this specific population. This is what it's going to take, because in this book, Get Outside, it talks, and this is what it says. This is a book about a very simple idea. This is what it says. Where the criminal justice system fails to respond vigorously to violent injury and death, homicide becomes epidemic. That's it. That's what it says. where the criminal justice system fails to respond to violent injury and death, homicides become an epidemic. That's what has happened. That's why we have First and 45 identifying social determinants contributing to the homicide epidemic. Why? Because we're failing to respond vigorously to violent injury and death. So it continues to stack. And the reason this show is necessary, it says African Americans have suffered from just such a lack of effective criminal justice, and this, more than anything, is the reason for the nation's long-standing plague of black homicides. So it's talking specifically to this and just effective criminal justice. All right. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, and I don't believe we can just point our fingers at the criminal justice. I think we have to go back to this moral issue, this biblical issue that we're always talking about, that we didn't see these things that we are discussing each week as we talk about the rap, all those things, that the moral issues that we're not being addressed, that we didn't have to address back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But it's, and I'm not saying I agree with everything on this book, but I'm glad to see content that speaks to the facts that we're always talking about. And Max Weber says specifically, Black America has not benefited from what he called a state of monopoly on violence. He said the government exclusive right to exercise legitimate force. Now, there's a lot of things going on right now with our president and how these things are moving about, and there's different interpretation on that, depending on where you live, how you perceive things. You know, what I'm trying to do is not how we're trying to stop it with force. You have to do that with what I call suppression. All right. But what I'm saying back on the front end is how we're going to go as a community, as a church, and be transformative in changing the lives of the people impacted by the families you're talking about in Queens. I mean, so your zip code should not sit here and give you a predictor of your success to pursue, of your opportunities to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But that's what it is, all right? Because if you're born in certain places, you're limited to your access to what's supposed to be a common right for us in the United States of America.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get into this argument of over-policing, under-policing, and all that. Well, I think all of us can agree we want everyone that's committed homicide off the streets. What level of policing does that take, that everyone that has pulled the trigger and taken another life is off the streets? Because when you start to look at this, I was telling someone this past weekend, our closure rate on homicides, 65%
on average.
On average. So that 30 to 35% of homicides. Young child knowing his dad was murdered.
And don't know who did it.
Doesn't know who did it. Lives in fear. Lives with an open door, an open wound instead of a closed one. Man, it's a mess.
35% every year. Do the math.
Yep. Hey guys, it's the end of the third quarter. We got one more quarter left. This is where the good stuff happens. So you don't want to go away. Don't leave the game early, because we got quite the story to tell next.
As a former football coach, knowing the engagement that takes place on the football field, the basketball courts, the track, baseball, outside of extracurricular activity, META is the best academic curriculum I've seen for the oftentimes socially challenged student. And glad to have a pilot program going here now with Hamilton Learning Academy, as well as juvenile detention facility, to inspire, grow hope to a population of kids who sometimes don't believe that in the United States that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is for them. And so this opportunity allows them to see that, to feel that, and to engage in that, and to leave here thinking that I can do something that maybe they didn't think they could do prior to enrolling in the META 24 program.
All right, who's the CFO? Yeah. Come on up. Give CFO a round of applause. All right, for the marketing promotion team.
My name's Shania, and I make this pillow. It's a baby pillow for babies. It can be for a boy or for a girl. It's saying, be what you want to be. I really want to make a side hustle of this and like give pillows to the hospital so you don't get good rest with like soft pillows like this.
Richard, I want to 3D print some stuff that will help us in the world. I would love to print 3D houses to help architects build real houses because there's a lot of people in the world that homeless right now, and I feel like if I'm able to print 3D houses, I feel like architects can make more houses faster.
And we're back to first and 45, and we're in the fourth quarter. I'm going to take a moment to, well, Coach, you got to close it out. So what are we going to talk about in this final quarter?
Well, I wanted to bring this up tomorrow that we will be at Arkansas Baptist College hosting what we call Building a Collective More Voice. And we will have Tina Dobbins.
It's at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock tomorrow. Tina Dobbins, Parents of Murdered Children. And we'll have Yolanda Harrison, founders of MOVS, Mothers of Black Sons Standing Against Dab. And we'll have Kelly Ward, Chief Deputy Prosecutor, 6th Judicial District, will be there. So 10 a.m. to 11:30, and what we're doing tomorrow, we're opening up our dining hall at 11:30 early for lunch. When you're on campus at Arkansas Baptist College, lunch is $15. All you can eat. Tomorrow's fried chicken. So if you just let you know, you can get as many pieces as you can eat. But we're really excited to.
Everybody know what Baptist College is, but 1600 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive here in the city of Little Rock.
Right, and we'll continue next month. Sheriff Higgins will be on the platform, be on the panel discussion. So we're trying to continue to, and that's what we're doing with Eric Kansan is working in Arkansas Baptist, working in partnership with this message to what we were just talking about, to resonate this crisis and the moral voice that we're trying to bring tomorrow, and how we can work with families. This is presented by Restore Hope in 100 Families of Central Arkansas. It's 10 o'clock tomorrow, and if you haven't heard Miss Yolanda Harrison story, it's one as how the last moments of which you spoke about today, and how she's using her gift now to share this with other mothers, because what we realized, there have been 39 homicides right now in Little Rock today, and that's about right. Yeah, and knowing the instance that had to be 39 calls to family. And that's just Little Rock. I'm not talking about the state of Arkansas, but understanding how these families are dealing with these traumatic experiences that continue to take place. And the reason that we address this out in this book, Genocides, which is really helping me on my next research project, the first 45 will be coming out this fall. It says, in the 1920s, a scholar concluded that Black death rates from homicide nationwide were about 7 times white rates. Now, and so we're going all the way back, because just looking at even then, and in the 1930s, Southern observers also noticed startling rates of Black violence. In the 1940s, a Philadelphia study found that Black men died from homicide at 12 times the white rate. So this has taught me a lot, even about then, but what it was saying, it was not recorded. Right. Okay, it's such, and so as I'm going back and understanding when I was speaking about this didn't happen back during these times, well, it happened, but what we got to understand and go back and look at how this, what we're saying, this curse still prevails, within our community. It says when the U.S. government began publishing data specific to Blacks in 1950, it revealed the same gap nationwide. The Black homicide death rate remained as much as 10 times higher than the white race in the 1960 and 1970, and has been 5 to 7 times higher for most of the past 30 years. And so understanding this, and when I went to the CDs, when I went to my to this, and this has been educational to me because I didn't know, because it wasn't something that was tracked. So now I'm going back and really understand, because to me, I often say that our history is where, is the game plan that we need to run. Now, the things that we realize because of the moral fiber running through our communities, that teenage pregnancy was lower and all those type of things. And so I'm really diving into this to really try to understand this phenomena that's continued to take place. But it really has baffled me to understand that we have known about this death for so long, and how we are not responding to the crisis. And it's for this reason, since 1950, as we talk about on our questionnaire, is that we have nearly 500,000 black males since 1950 that have been murdered in the United States of America. And I think when you there was one thing that it talked about, that our cities, not so much talk about how this book, when it talks about, it compared our cities to as deadly, to many of our communities, to as deadly as being deployed to Iraq. So understanding that you have a better opportunity to make it back from war in many places than you do of where you're born. And I just thought that was such an interesting analysis on how many of our communities are more dangerous than war zones. And how we're going to, how do we go into combat to create safety? I mean, all of these things, man. It's one thing to have an understanding about what's going on, but I don't have an understanding, and so that's why I'm digging, and that's why we have the show, to have the discussions, because these are things that are actually taking place. When we're looking at UAMS, and when we're researching cancer, when we're researching all of these things, we're looking at, okay, why is there such a high death rate with this type of cancer than it is this type of cancer? So to me, I'm thinking, okay, this is what First and 45 is about, since there's no attention been given to this.
Well, I've got type 1 diabetes. They've done more research on type 1 diabetes. I got insulin, I got a pump, I've got all these things. But even looking into the diet, the amount of sleep you get, all this stuff becomes super important for me to live the life that I want to live. So many of our young people, especially our young men, man, they're getting absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
They don't even realize that they live in a war zone. To so many of them, this is normal.
Yep.
This is acceptable. What I don't have, the abuse I go through, the violence that I see, the lack of it, this is normal. Mm-hmm. And I think what I really want to see is a disruption of that.
No question.
I think if our young people stood up and were as righteously angry about this as other, in my mind, frivolous things that go on
that are not life or death issues.
It's like, man, we could move the needle on this problem.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying overthrow the government or whatever, but man, we've got to set a fire underneath ourselves to say, man, this just isn't right.
Right.
I was looking at the Cracker Barrel changed their logo this week, and it was all over the news. And people were talking about it. People were sending texts about it and all this other stuff over a logo change. And I'm like, man, 30 people died today.
Yep.
Crickets.
But that logo
got the fire going all the way up to the president. and I mean, what is it going to take for his people to stand up and say, this is not right. This is not what God created us for. This is not what God wants for us. This is a holy discontent of stepping into this. I mean, My dad, he just got off of prostate cancer treatment. But, Coach, it's like what you always talk about. He had a 14 on his PSA.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just took his PSA post-treatment, and it's like 0.4. And it's like
Early detection.
the whole thing, there's an easy way to tell when things aren't right. And what we've got going on right now, I mean, we got a lot of early detection alarms going off.
Yep.
But we just hit the silence
That's
button.
exactly
like
the snooze button. That's the snooze button on early detection. And what we're saying, because we know now, we've looked at these, what we call these 7 social determinants that we have been able to identify from the population that we've been able to study, and and hoping to do more studying, to have more information, to be able to these factors that's leading to this epidemic. And I mean, and so when they question us, then we'll have a response, an educated response that said, we understand this, we know this. If you something that you want to assist us, and as you said, being disruptive. And when I think about Uber, I think about disrupting the cab companies that we grew up on, the yellow cab. But now you can get an Uber right here. That's transformation. That's what we're trying to do to this homicide epidemic. Hey, it's 1st and 45 with Coach Fitz. Hey, thank you for being with us. What you got?
Real quick, Thursday, is it too late to register for Thursday?
We still got a few openings left Thursday at 3:17. Going to be coaching and teaching and helping nonprofit leaders and pastors and take back some things that they rightfully should have. So excited about that. We've also got what Coach said tomorrow at
10 a.m.
10 a.m. over at Arkansas Baptist. But you hear us talk about these mamas. If you want to hear it from their mouth, if you want to touch, feel, and hear, it's a place to be tomorrow.
Father, bless us in Jesus' name. We'll see you next week.